We will today begin to look at why privatization happens. In the past, we've looked at what is privatization and the different forms of privatization. Today, we will begin to see some of the reasons why privatization in education particularly happens in Pakistan and in other parts of the world. There are many factors that drive privatization in education, and these factors differ in intensity across different countries. The reasons may be similar, but the intensity of the change is different. We will also be looking at the change across the three sectors of education, which is primary, secondary, and tertiary. Those education sectors are very different, and therefore the impact or the reason for bringing about privatization in those particular sectors also differs. So we will be looking at both the reasons for the privatization and the reasons for deferring needs for privatization over the three sectors of education. It is worth noting that some advocates of privatization are motivated by an ideological commitment. The ideology that a group or individual or an organization professes plays a role in the privatization process. The ideological commitment involves individual rights over government intervention, which simply says that it is a basic human right of parents to decide where their children will go to school, what kind of school they will go to, even if the school is at a distance from where they live, instead of having to send their children to a particular school in their area, which is public, run by the government, and not of a very good standard. These advocates strongly believe that a family's right to choose its own education is paramount. So again, the bottom line really here is basic human rights, freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom to do what you want to do, what you think is right for your children. And for parents, nothing is more important than the best for their children. So if as a parent, I'm looking for my best and the best for my children, I should not have to send my children to predetermined schools. I should be able to choose the school I want for my children and where that school possibly could be. Other advocates may stress efficiency. In other words, how efficient, okay, I've chosen the school, how efficient is the education process, which really boils down to, is my child or my children getting quality, effective education? Or did I really make the wrong choice? So efficiency is important, but detractors argue that any private education system based on ability to pay is inequitable. There is no doubt that private schools have high fee structures, and it's the parents' ability to pay really which becomes the bottom line for deciding, can I send my child to a particular school? In other words, am I really able to afford the educational expenses of my child? Because it's not just the fees, it's other expenses also. It's uniform, clothing, it's transportation, it's food, and those kinds of things also that add up. So to the obviously high fee structure, when you add these other ancillary expenses, they become very, very high, and parents may not be able to afford that. So the ability to pay then really becomes the deciding factor. And when parents are willing to pay, and many parents sacrifice a lot in order to be able to send their children to good high tuition schools, then want quality education. The conventional view is to see privatization as a way of redressing the balance from government involvement to greater autonomy for families. So if you weigh the two sides, government and autonomy, which is freedom of choice for parents, what is going to win? And if you can afford to pay, I guess the autonomy wins. But if you can't afford to pay, then you have to go to a cheaper private school or to a government school. Both government and family are important, and privatization shifts the emphasis onto the latter relative to the former. So whenever privatization comes in, both are important, government schools and private schools, but when private schools come into play, the balance shifts towards the private schools, especially for parents who can afford to send their children and pay the high fees demanded by such schools.